You know what's cool? Star Wars. Well, at least, old Star Wars stuff. Growing up in the 90s, a lot of people loved Star Wars because of the fact that a lot of our parents and family members grew up with Star Wars. It was unlike any sort of film trilogy that had ever been released as far as captivating people's imaginations. Now, of course, because of that, Star Wars was a continual beast that is what it is today, whether you love it or hate it or not, that's kind of up to you. But during the 90s, we had Star Wars memorabilia. We had stuff like Star Wars toys, and of course, you had Star Wars video games. Now, on the console side of things, I owned a Sega Genesis, so I had no Star Wars video games. But Super Nintendo fans had the trilogy of 2D side-scrolling games that are pretty good. I think they look pretty good, just brutally difficult games. I don't know why they're so difficult, but, enjoyable stuff. But over on the PC, they were cooking. There was a bunch of cool games on the PC personal computer that I didn't have access to because I didn't have a PC. I remember my dad was a district manager for Boston Chicken, and we went over to one of his employees' houses for dinner, and first off, they had a house and we had an apartment, and I'm like, bro, this is your employee? Why is he living better than you? But he was probably in debt. And he also had this kid that looked kind of like Chucky, or the kid from Problem Child as well. One of those weird looking ginger kids. And he had a personal computer, PC, in his house. We played some Doom. He had a demo disc for Star Wars Dark Forces. And I was like, I want to play this. And he was like, no. So I would look at it in video game magazines like Game Pro and stuff like that. I was absolutely infatuated with this game, but I never got to play it. And it ended up coming out on the PlayStation 1, and now nearly 30 years later, it's released on modern platforms. I ended up getting a review copy of Star Wars Dark Forces for the Nintendo Switch, and I was excited for this. It's a remastered edition, but I was also kind of leery. I was like, is this game going to hold up? I've been waiting nearly 30 years to play this game. Am I still going to enjoy it like I would have as a youth? And that's what we're going to find out in today's video. So in Star Wars Dark Forces, you play as a character named Kyle Katarn. And Kyle Katarn joins up with the Empire at a young age because he's mad at the rebels, because he thinks that the rebels killed his father, but it comes to find out that no, it was the Empire that killed his father. So then he turns his back on the Empire. He's a mercenary. He starts doing jobs with the rebels in order to take down the Empire. Now, of course, since this is a Star Wars game, there's lots of twists and turns, various characters that you meet in your quest to avenge your father and all that sort of stuff. Pretty well done stuff. I will say I definitely like the cutscenes that play sometimes in between levels because these have been enhanced, but even beyond that, I think it does a good job of telling the story that something like a console couldn't do in the mid-90s. There's voice acting with all of these characters as well, which ranges from pretty solid to actually really well done. I think the guy who plays Darth Vader is absolutely fantastic. I actually thought it was James Earl Jones doing the voice of Darth Vader, but no, it wasn't. It was some other guy, and he did a damn good job. Of course, this game is known for its gameplay, which was basically like Star Wars meets Doom. And Doom was the biggest thing in the world with first-person shooters during this time frame, and that was what really drew me into this game because it wasn't a 2D side-scroller, it was a 3D game, and it just looks so cool. Gameplay-wise, I will say that the game still does hold up very well. If you're a fan of boomer shooters, if you're more into the modern first-person shooters, there can kind of be an adjustment. Basically, you go into a level and you have some missions to do within that level, and you basically find things like key cards in order to access different areas, solve different little puzzles and stuff like that, different key codes for different little terminals that you got to put in. It's pretty standard stuff for the time frame, but the Star Wars aesthetic, I think, makes it really cool because all the levels have their own sort of flair to them. All the levels have their own sort of unique feel to them, and that's what kind of makes this game stand out. There's also platforming in the game as well, which is actually kind of an important thing. Some of the platforming can be pretty tricky. I definitely had some deaths from it that I was kind of like, all right, I shouldn't have died there. That's kind of BS. How was I supposed to know that? But there's lots of how was I supposed to know that sort of moments with this game. But I feel like that sort of adds to the charm of it. Now, you do have a set number of lives. You can actually find additional lives in a level. And once you deplete those lives, you actually start back over at the start of the level. You have a continue system when you die that basically puts you right back where you were. So that's pretty cool, but it can be kind of frustrating if you're playing a level for 15 or 20 minutes. You get nearly to the end of it, and then you die, and then you got to do it all over again. You know, a little bit on the frustrating side, but kind of just indicative of the era that this game came out in. There's a bunch of different weapons you get in the game as well, and I think that's pretty cool because you want to blow through these different stormtroopers and Empire guards, different boss battles and stuff like that. The weapon variety is pretty solid. Some of the weapons you actually have to find on your own, like actually most of them you have to find on your own, so there is a chance that you could like miss them. I don't really care for like the thermal mines that you throw. I feel like I never sort of got the feeling for those, and most of the time they would just blow me up or take away damage from me instead of hitting the enemy. So I kind of just stuck with mostly the stormtrooper gun because I felt like that was pretty much like good enough with this game. One thing that I really like about this game is just kind of like how your inventory system can expand without you ever like realizing it. So there's an ice level in the game, and when you get onto the ice, like you move really slow and like you don't have like great control over the character, and you know, it just kind of slows you down. Like you eventually get to where you need to go, but it just kind of slows you down. Well, I was exploring a level because I was stuck, and in a very cryptic area, I found the ice boots. And with these ice boots, then I could move freely on the ice and have absolutely no problem. And it felt like any other sort of terrain that you would walk on. Now, I like this sort of stuff because it's not necessary for you to complete the level. It just makes the level easier for you, and it makes your traversal easier for you. It wasn't mandatory, it was optional, but it was worth finding because of the fact that it made things easier. I will say I definitely enjoy the gameplay in this game. And yes, it kind of plays like a boomer shooter. There's lots of shooting going on. There's lots of enemies on screen at times, but I feel like it's fun and frantic, and it's really well done in this modern version of the game. Now, as far as the modern features are concerned, there are quite a few of them. Starting off, we have the graphics. Now, you can play with the enhanced graphics, or you can play with the original graphics of the game. I really like the enhanced graphics. You know, yes, the 2D sprites of the enemies kind of look a little bit strange on screen, but I feel like that's just sort of how they were done at the time. You know, that's how games like Doom and stuff were, with 2D sprites on 3D backgrounds. But I think they did a really good job of it. There's some different things that you can tweak as well. And like I said, you can always go back to the original graphical style should you want to do that. The audio has been slightly enhanced as well. There's different MIDI tunes that play in the game. I think it all sounds really well done, and you know, definitely indicative of that Star Wars sort of nature. You do have like different tunes that play at different times. Like it gets a little bit more frantic when there's a lot of stuff going on screen, and then sometimes it'll calm down a little bit. Very atmospheric and very sort of cool as far as, you know, setting the tone for Star Wars. You also have modern controls in this game as well. If you're playing the Nintendo Switch version of the game like I was, you can actually use motion controls, which, I mean, I didn't really use them, but, you know, I'm sure there's somebody out there that will appreciate them. Like, it's a pretty standard boomer shooter, so, like, you know, you're just using a modern control scheme on something like that. But if you want to use the motion controls, like, you can. You know, it's a dual stick shooter that's pretty much feels like a more modern game, but it definitely has its roots in that classic stuff. There's also a bunch of additional content that they've added into this as well, such as like concept art, behind the scenes stuff. You know, it's a very nicely done package. So I kind of go back to my original question, was like, was this worth waiting nearly 30 years to play, and did it live up to my expectations? I'll say 100% yes. Like, I have enjoyed this game. I think I'm enjoying this game more now than I would have as a kid. Like, I think it's that good of a base game, and like fun, and just very, you know, it was when Star Wars didn't just sort of jump the shark and everything was Star Wars. Like, if something had Star Wars branding on it, it meant something. You know, it meant something in the Star Wars universe. It meant that it was a high quality product. This was Lucas, you know, this was Lucasfilms, not Disney just whoring out everything Star Wars related. So, but in some regards, I have to thank Disney for allowing companies to remake and remaster these old games. Like, yeah, it's a $30 game. So if you're not a Star Wars fan, I'd probably be a little bit hesitant on it, but I definitely feel like it's worth it, man. Like, I've been having so much fun with this game. I love the way the story plays out. I love trying to kind of rack my brain about, you know, where I need to go next. There's a million freaking walkthroughs online though. So like, there's really no excuse for you to get stuck unless you just suck at the game. There's multiple difficulties as well. Just a really well done game, man. I'm definitely, you know, it takes me back to the mid 90s. It takes me back to like a time frame where I would have loved this game, but I think I love this game more now than I would have back then because I'm a little bit older and I can appreciate these things. Star Wars Dark Forces, I don't know how it plays on the other platforms. I assume it's great, but the Nintendo Switch version of the game, top-notch stuff. Played it mostly in handheld mode, of course. Absolutely love this game. Absolutely love it. Great story, great gameplay. Kind of frustrating at times, but I can look past that. Let me know in the comment section down below, though. Do you plan on picking up Star Wars Dark Forces for any of your systems? Did you ever play this game growing up, or are you a kid and you don't know what the hell I'm talking about? And if that's the case, you know, thank you to making it to the end of the video, because that helps with retention time, and that makes this video look better in the eyes of YouTube. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. Give me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new. We're on the road to 500,000 subscribers. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.